So for today's video, I'm going to some do a summary review for all the chapters. So on this video, I'm just explaining some things from chapter 1 to chapter 11, and I think let's get started. So in chapter 1 is basically it's more on knowing what the internet is and what the internet was for and what are the different benefits of internet to our daily living. On this generation, we know that internet is one of the helpful things that when it comes to searching, finding information, communicating to another person a very very far away from us, then that's the internet. It's now on today's generation. It's now part of our life, and also on this chapter we also discuss the LANs, WANs, and the internet, which is has a great part of knowing how the networking share mm, how the networking works. Like for LANs, it's for a small geographical area only. For example, a home, and small OPs like that. And the one is like has a wide range of area, which is it can give connection for different places for different lands. That is far away from the internet service provider. And then the network platform is the platform on the internet and the network and the changing network environment. So the changing network environment is we know that our environment is changing. Sometimes it's dramatically changing and sometimes it's slow changing. So the internet should adapt on those changes that happens to our surrounding. So that's all for chapter 1. And on chapter 2, it is all about the basic device configuration, which is configuring switch, configuring router, and other devices that we can configure that can use on networking. So there's a lot of basic configuration like configuration on host name, on console password, remote password, aux password, and also the when creating an IP address for every interfaces. For example, in router, you will going to create an IP address for gigabit Ethernet, um, fast Ethernet, serial port, like those things. Then that's all for chapter 2. It's more on basic configuration. Then proceeding to chapter 3, it's network protocol communication. This chapter 3 is this chapter is more on the how does communication on the devices flow. So for example, like on the human communication, we need an encoder, a media, decoder, a feedback, and all of the things that works on the communication. So in this chapter, there's a bunch of rules that will help the communication much be better. For example, of that rule is the when someone's talking, just don't attempt to talk so that you will able to understand each other. Give space and time for giving information so that there's no misunderstanding that will happen. And also, how does the data transfer in the internet and network protocols and standards? There's a bunch of network protocols such as things that will help, like ICMP, like those things. Then that's enough for chapter 3. And chapter 4, it's more on network access. It's more on topo- okay. Chapter 4 is more on the how we can create a how we can design a network how can we design a proper network, and what's the purpose of this network media. There are different network media that we can use. For example, we want this copper cabling, so either we can use either UTP cable, and coaxial cable, and STP cable. But there's some difference, and also there's a benefits when using those three. There's a specific benefits for each cable, and also for the data link layer protocols. So on the data link, it's the upper layer that more focusing on the IP address of a IP addresses for what IP address on from what IP address should the message will be sent. Then the media access control is more on the device, so that there's a topologies. So the topologies we can recognize it as physical and logical. So when it comes to physical topologies, it's more on the physical. When we say physical, it's more on the what are the devices that we can touch. For example, intermediate devices like router and switches. If we build a physical topology, what we are going to draw or list is the intermediary devices, and also the device and the kind of media like UTP, console cable, and etc. Then, when it comes to logical topologies, it's mostly we are dealing with or we are using IP address to to create a topology for our network. And then, okay, it's enough for this chapter. And chapter 5, Ethernet. Ethernet is more on how we understand the frame and the MAC addresses. Then the MAC addresses addressing MAC address table, which the MAC address will be stored, and after 2 minutes they will be gone. And how does the switch forward? How does the switch forward data, like cut through switching, like that stuff? And next is ARP, or Address Resolution Protocol. ARP is it is one of the important part of this, because if the sender device doesn't know what is the MAC address of the device. MAC address is like it's a very unique part of a device. Every device has a unique MAC address that has no one device has. So sometimes the sender device want to send a specific data, information, or message as to the receiver device, but that device doesn't have the receiver's MAC address. So the sender device will going to send an ARP request, so that that device will going to send the information to the correct receiver. So if the receiver has so the sender device will going to send an ARP request to the destination IP address. When the device will going to broadcast that ARP request. Then when the receiver device um, has the same destination IP address to the so that and when the destination IP address is same as the receiver IP address, the receiver IP address will going to send a ARP reply, so that the the sender device will able to send the information. So proceeding to chapter 6. So on chapter 6 is more on routing, on how we configure the router. So it's like how we configure switch. There's a lot of things that just such as passwords, creating, configuring passwords, host name, like that. So proceeding to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is here we are going on this chapter we are able to understand what is IPv4 and what is IPv6. What are the factor uh, that that can that affect why why IPv6 is better than IPv4. And on this chapter also we will able to learn how to check connectivity between devices like ping, traceroute, and other stuff that can that can check connectivity. So the IPv4, we know that it is limited on this generation because there's so many devices that we're using today. On the whole world, there's are so many devices that makes IPv4 become limited, and IPv6 is the very new version that has a lot of possibilities of IP addresses. So that's all for chapter 7 about IP addressing. Next one is chapter 8. Chapter 8 is all about how we can create an IPv4 address or IPv6 address. There's a bunch of addressing scheme that we can use. On subnetting, we will consider the the IP address that we will going to start and how we will going to subnet that IP address so that we can get different IP addresses, a lot of IP addresses that we can use for a device on a specific LAN connection. So like that, and this in this chapter also we will notice that the design was very needed when it comes to creating a network topology or or a simple network. So let's go to chapter 9. And chapter 9 is more on the transport layer, on how does the data from application layer become a segment. And the transport layer has a different protocol like TCP and UDP, which we all know that from the previous from the previous from my previous video, TCP is more reliable than UDP, but UDP is much faster than TCP, and and these protocols have their own has very unique to each other. There are no similarities. They all have differences, but those differences make them special on their way, on deliver, how they deliver data, and depends on the different protocols from application layer on what are the transport layer protocols that they will use. For example, if it's a DNS, for sure it's either use UDP or TCP. And for HTTP needs a most reliable connection, and there's there must be a connection between the device and the receiver so that it will going to use TCP. And so all for that for transport layer in chapter 9. We are now proceeding to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is application is most on application layer. So what is an application layer? Application layer is the most interactive layer than the rest of the layer. So how can I say? Because it's like this interactive because on the TCP/IP reference model, it is only application layer. But in the OSI model, it's divided into three, which is application layer, session layer, and what's the other one? And the session layer. So all of those three, they are all interactive. How can I say? Application layer is like the URL bar. always there's always an HTTPS, and we all know that HTTPS is how we can that is protocol that that's on application layer, and on HTTPS we can on most of the HTTPS is on the URL bars of a browsers. So on the URL bar we can interact, we can search, we can find some things that we need to find. And also on the presentation it's more on the showing presentation sessions. It's more on showing some pictures, videos, uh what we call this GIFs, like that. Like what we've seen on the screen, they are a presentation to us of the device. From for example, they you want to watch a video and you will going to find it on a server. If you downloaded the video, you can the device will able to present that video to you. And all of those for chapter 10, I think you will understand this because I've already created a bunch of videos about these chapters. And last is the chapter 11. What is in the chapter 11 is more on the building a small network. Then what what do we need to build a small network? Of course, we need a network design, better network security, basic network performance, and network troubleshooting. We need those things so that our small network will be good, and it can adjust on many different ways. For example, on our networking design, so that will that will be the on how we place devices and routers and switches. For example, we divide 50 devices so that it will fit the two routers, and the connectivity will and we can get a better connectivity. And the network security, of course, everything that we everything that we have and everything that we do, we should have a security so that to avoid some some bad things to happen to our network or to ourselves, because we may be at risk when we don't have security at all. Then the basic network performance. So yes, of course we are able to create a network, but we need to be sure on the performance of our network, if it's slow or if it's fast. We need to sure of that so that we don't feel any disturbance when we are using our network or when we are connected to our network. And next is network troubleshooting. Network troubleshooting is one of the needed things in networking. It's for my personal understanding. Why? It's because when yes, we created a small network, but how how do we know what how do we know every problems that can happen to our network? So troubleshooting is one of the best thing that we can do. Having a basic understanding of troubleshooting will help us a lot when it comes to creating a network. Either it's a big network, huge network, or small network. Either on those networks, troubleshooting will help us on the way on creating those networks, because on troubleshooting we are able to fix we are able to identify what are the different problems that our network facing. So that's all for the chapter summary, and I hope you understand new things, and I hope you learn again something from me, and thank you for watching my video, and goodbye.